The morning in Cambridge, Massachusetts was chilly, and colorful fallen leaves were dancing outside the window. Emily Hartwell stood in the kitchen, carefully simmering cranberry sauce to bring to Thanksgiving dinner. A melancholy particular to this season cast a faint shadow across her face. "Mama, what's this?" 5-year-old Ethan dragged a chair into the kitchen. His large brown eyes sparkled with curiosity. Emily smiled and held out the wooden spoon. "It's cranberry sauce, honey. We'll eat it at Grandma's house. Want to try some?" Ethan tentatively tasted it with his little tongue and scrunched up his face at the sweet and sour flavor. His expression was so adorable that Emily couldn't help but hug him. She remembered the day 3 years ago when she and her husband Michael welcomed this child into their family. Ethan, who had been 6 months old then, was now their irreplaceable son. "Where's Daddy?" Ethan asked. "He's raking leaves in the yard. Want to go help him?" Michael was in the garden with a rake, gathering the colorful fallen leaves. He worked as an architect while being a caring husband who spared no time for his family. When Ethan ran over, Michael hoisted his son onto his shoulders. "We're going to Grandma's house today, aren't we, Ethan?" "Yes. But Grandma doesn't really play with me much." Emily felt her heart tighten as she listened to their conversation through the window. Her mother Margaret and sister Jessica, while treating them normally on the surface, clearly showed a difference in their attitude toward Ethan. Margaret lived in a grand mansion in the Boston suburbs. Since losing her husband early, she had become particularly obsessed with family tradition and bloodlines. Her sister Jessica was a stay-at-home mom raising 3 children. She faithfully inherited their mother's values and believed without question that blood ties were the foundation of family bonds. For Emily, the events of 3 years ago still remained as wounds in her heart. A sudden miscarriage at 7 months pregnant. The doctors said the cause was unknown, but the despair she felt then was beyond words. When she and Michael had cried together and nearly lost hope for the future, the option of adoption appeared. Meeting Ethan was destiny. The moment she first held him at the adoption agency, warm light filled Emily's heart. She was certain that this child was truly their son. Michael felt the same way. However, the family's reaction was complicated. While her mother accepted him on the surface, she had mentioned a grandson without blood ties several times. Jessica's attitude was more blatant. She explained to her own children that Ethan came from a different family, and clearly made distinctions. This was evident even at Ethan's birthday party last month. She had prepared expensive gifts for Jessica's 3 children, but only gave Ethan a book voucher. When Emily protested, she coldly said, "Since he's adopted, special treatment isn't necessary." Still, Emily tried to maintain family relationships. Michael felt the same way, and every year they visited her mother's house for Thanksgiving, trying to spend time together harmoniously on the surface. In the afternoon, Emily carefully transferred the cranberry sauce into a container and loaded it into the car. Michael took Ethan's hand and headed toward the car. "Let's do our best again this year," Michael said, placing his hand on Emily's shoulder. "Yes. For Ethan's sake too." The car slowly headed toward the Boston suburbs. Emily watched Ethan playing with toys in the back seat, sincerely hoping that today would pass peacefully. A week before Thanksgiving, Emily's daily life was wrapped in busyness. As an accountant, she had work piling up with the year-end busy season approaching, but she still cherished time with her family. "Mama, I drew a picture at school today." When Ethan came home from kindergarten, he proudly showed her the drawing paper clutched in his small hands. There was a family picture drawn in colored pencils. Daddy, Mama, and himself. All 3 holding hands and smiling. "That's very good, Ethan. Let's put it on the refrigerator." As Emily hugged her son, she realized anew how precious this child was to her. Blood ties didn't matter. This child was undoubtedly her son. However, an event occurred that cast a shadow over their peaceful daily life. It happened on a Saturday afternoon when they attended a birthday party for one of Ethan's classmates. Jessica and her 3 children were also at the park where the party was held. "Oh, Emily. Ethan's here too." Jessica's voice had an artificial brightness to it. Her son Ryan was 7, and the twin daughters were 6, all slightly older than Ethan. "Hello, Jessica. How are the children?" "Fine, thank you." "Ryan, say hello to Ethan." Ryan gave Emily a small wave but didn't even look at Ethan. The twin daughters acted the same way, treating Ethan as if he were invisible. "Want to play together?" Ethan called out innocently, but the children shook their heads. "Mama told us. Since he's not a real cousin, we don't have to be especially nice to him." Ryan's words pierced Emily's heart like an icy blade. Ethan didn't understand the meaning and looked confused. "Ryan. You shouldn't say such things," Emily said, desperately trying to control her anger. Jessica shrugged. "Children are honest. But you shouldn't say things that hurt Ethan's feelings, Ryan." While it appeared she was scolding him on the surface, there was no color of remorse in her tone. Emily took her son's hand and left the scene. In the car on the way home, Ethan asked in a small voice, "Mama, am I not a real cousin?" Emily fought back tears while driving. "Ethan, you are our precious son. That's what matters most." But whether there are blood ties or not, family that loves each other is real family. That night, when Michael came home, Emily told him about the day's events. Her husband's face flushed with anger. "Jessica's way is wrong. Teaching children such things. But there's only so much we can do. We can only protect Ethan." Michael hugged Emily. "You and Ethan are everything to me. We don't need anyone else's approval." The next day, Emily called her mother. It was supposed to be about discussing Thanksgiving preparations, but the conversation quickly turned to yesterday's events. Jessica's children said rude things to Ethan. "Oh, really?" Margaret's reaction was predictably cold. "But it's complicated for the children, Emily. Relationships without blood ties. Mother, Ethan is our son. Of course, legally. But it's also a fact that he's not of Winston bloodline, isn't it?" After hanging up the phone, Emily sighed deeply. Why was her family so obsessed with bloodlines? The day before Thanksgiving, Emily was having lunch with her colleague Sarah. Sarah was also a mother raising an adopted child and was someone who understood Emily. "Family problems are difficult," Sarah said with empathy. "But anyone can see how much you and Michael love Ethan." "Thank you. But sometimes I get tired. Why do we have to keep proving ourselves? Love doesn't need proof. But sometimes you need to stand up and fight." Sarah's words resonated deeply in Emily's heart. That evening, as Michael and Emily finished their Thanksgiving preparations, they discussed the next day. "Mother and Jessica's attitudes probably won't change this year either," Emily said while putting the cranberry sauce in the refrigerator. "But I think your efforts to maintain family relationships for Ethan's sake are wonderful." "Is that really true?" "Sometimes I think I should stand up to their attitudes." Michael placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. "I trust your judgment. But if Ethan gets hurt, we have to protect him." On Thanksgiving morning, Emily got up early to finish the final preparations. Ethan was wearing new clothes and spinning happily in front of the mirror. "Let's have a wonderful time at Grandma's house today," Emily said while fixing her son's hair. "Are Ryan and the others coming too?" "Yes, they're coming. We'll all have dinner together. Before getting in the car, Michael squeezed Emily's hand. Whatever happens, we're family. Don't forget that. Yes. We're a real family. During the drive to Margaret's house, Emily watched Ethan singing in the back seat. She wanted to protect this child's innocent smile. For that, she was prepared to fight any difficulty. When Emily and her family arrived at Margaret's mansion, Jessica's car was already parked in the driveway. The front door opened and Margaret appeared. She had her gray hair perfectly set and wore an elegant navy dress with a pearl necklace. Emily, Michael, welcome. She greeted Emily and Michael warmly but only lightly patted Ethan's head. The difference was subtle but definitely there. In the living room, Jessica and her husband Brad, along with their 3 children, were already relaxing. A fire burned in the fireplace, filling the entire room with warm light. Emily. Good to see you, Jessica stood up and embraced her. Ethan came too. Hello there. Jessica's greeting was friendly on the surface, but Emily could sense the coldness beneath it. The children gradually began playing in the living room, but Ryan and the twin daughters didn't try to include Ethan. Ethan was reading a picture book by himself but occasionally showed a lonely expression. Dinner is ready, Margaret announced. The large table in the dining room was laid with traditional Thanksgiving dishes. Turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, and the cranberry sauce Emily had brought. The table decorations were also perfect, reflecting Margaret's meticulous personality. When they took their seats, adults and children naturally separated. Emily sat next to Ethan, with Michael sitting across from them. Margaret sat at the head of the table, maintaining a queen-like dignity. Now, let's offer our prayer of gratitude, Margaret clasped her hands together. As everyone bowed their heads, Margaret eloquently recited a prayer. Dear God, we thank you that our family remains healthy this year and that our bloodline has been kept pure. Emily frowned. Why use the word bloodline? It was clearly a statement made with Ethan in mind. When the meal began, conversation naturally turned to updates on recent events. Jessica proudly talked about her children's achievements at school, while Margaret listened happily. Ryan got a perfect score on his math test. As expected from someone with Winston blood, Jessica said proudly. Wonderful. Intelligence is hereditary, Margaret smiled. Emily felt uncomfortable but tried to remain calm. Ethan is very good at drawing too. His teacher praises him. Oh, really? Margaret's response was lukewarm. Artistic talent is important too, but academics are more important for the future. The conversation continued for a while, but tension gradually built. When dessert time came, Jessica's children began openly ignoring Ethan. Hey, Mama, one of the twins, Emma, said loudly. Why does Ethan look different from us? Emma, you shouldn't ask such things, Brad hurriedly tried to stop her. However, Jessica didn't stop her daughter. Rather, she smiled as if she had found an opportunity. Emma, Ethan is adopted. That means he's not real family. At that moment, silence fell over the dining room. Ethan didn't understand the meaning and looked up at Emily with a confused expression. Jessica, that way of putting it isn't appropriate, Emily quietly protested. But it's the truth, isn't it? Jessica shrugged. It's best to be honest with children. Margaret put down her wine glass and opened her mouth. That's right. It's important to understand family history correctly. Mother, what are you trying to say? Emily asked, feeling anxious. Margaret smiled and said, Actually, Emily, I've been thinking about your miscarriage 3 years ago. Emily's face changed color. What are you? It was really difficult at the time. But now that I think about it, Margaret took a sip of wine before continuing. Thanks to your miscarriage, our family line wasn't tainted, don't you think? Emily gasped. Michael started to stand up, but Emily stopped him with her hand. Mother, what are you saying? Well, think about it, Margaret smiled with satisfaction. If that child had been born, you wouldn't have needed to adopt. Then, the relatives began chuckling. Jessica was also smiling in agreement. That's right, Jessica stood up and placed her hand on Ethan's head. After all, just the real grandchildren are enough. Ethan didn't understand the adults' conversation and looked anxiously at his mother. Emily's heart was beating violently. Anger, sadness, and some other emotions swirled in her chest. As the relatives' laughter continued, Emily quietly stood up. Then, from the handbag she had brought, she took out an envelope. Would you still say the same thing after seeing this? Emily's voice was quiet, but there was steel-like strength in it. She placed the envelope in the center of the table. At that moment, the laughter stopped. The smiles disappeared from Margaret and Jessica's faces as they stared at the envelope. What is that? Margaret's voice mixed with agitation. A private investigator's report, Emily answered calmly. I had them investigate my miscarriage from 3 years ago. Jessica's face turned pale. Investigation report, what did you investigate? Emily opened the envelope and took out the contents. It was a detailed report spanning dozens of pages. Mother, Jessica, Emily looked at both of them. Do you remember what you did when you learned about my pregnancy? I don't know what you're talking about, Margaret said in a trembling voice. You recommended special tea to me. You said it was herbal tea that was good for pregnant women. Heavy silence fell over the dining room. Michael placed his hand on his wife's shoulder, and Ethan, sensing the adults' tense atmosphere, huddled closer. Emily opened the first page of the report. This report contains all of your terrible truth. Margaret and Jessica's faces turned white. Emily spread out the first page of the report for everyone to see. There, along with the private detective agency's letterhead, was the title, Investigation Report on Intentional Miscarriage Induction by Margaret Winston and Jessica Roberts. Emily, what exactly is that? Michael looked at his wife with a confused expression. I've been having this investigated for 3 months, Emily turned to her husband. There were things about the miscarriage that I couldn't accept. Margaret gripped her napkin with trembling hands. Emily, what are you suspecting? We're your mother and sister. That's right, Mother. That's exactly why I wanted to know the truth, Emily turned the page of the report. Remember when I was 7 months pregnant? The day you and Jessica visited my house. Cold sweat appeared on Jessica's face. What are you talking about? I don't remember. You're lying, Emily's voice was quiet but full of conviction. October 15, 2021, Saturday afternoon. You visited our house saying you wanted to consult about health management during pregnancy. Emily opened the next page of the report. There were detailed timelines and evidence photos. That day, you brought special herbal tea for me. Mother explained it as a secret blend passed down through the Winston family for generations. Margaret's lips turned pale. That was really good for your health. No, Emily declared. Here are the component analysis results of that tea. Look at page 12 of the report. She opened the relevant page. Detailed chemical analysis results were recorded there. Pennyroyal, tansy, angelica root, Emily read them one by one. These are all extremely dangerous herbs for pregnant women. Pennyroyal in particular is famous as a plant used in folk remedies for abortion. Heavy silence fell over the dining room. Brad told the children to go play in the next room, but the children couldn't move due to the adults' tense atmosphere. It was a coincidence, Jessica said in a trembling voice. We didn't know such things. Really? Emily smiled coldly. Then how do you explain this? The next page showed Jessica's computer search history that the private investigator had legally obtained. September 20th, 2021, pregnancy termination natural methods, pennyroyal pregnancy effects, herbs that cause miscarriage. Emily read the search history. These were all searched from your computer, Jessica. Jessica's face turned ashen. That was just research. General knowledge. September 20th was the day after I reported my pregnancy to you, Emily continued mercilessly. And here's even more decisive evidence. She opened another page. There was a printout of emails. These are email exchanges between you two. Margaret tried to stand up, but her legs wobbled and she sat back down in the chair. From Jessica to Margaret, sent October 1st, 2021, Emily began reading. Mama, about Emily's situation, if that child is born, the Winston bloodline will be diluted. Isn't there some way? Stop, Jessica screamed. Don't read anymore. But Emily continued. Margaret's reply, same day, Jessica, I was thinking the same thing. There's a story I heard from grandmother long ago. We might be able to solve the problem naturally. Michael clenched his fists. Unbelievable. You tried to, your own daughter and grandchild. No. Margaret screamed tearfully. We were just thinking about the family's future. To protect the Winston bloodline. Bloodline? Emily stood up. You killed my child for your insane values. The next page of the report contained more detailed evidence. Herb purchase records, specialized book order histories, and as decisive evidence, records of Jessica asking on online forums about methods to prevent sister-in-law's pregnancy. October 10th, you asked a question on a pregnancy prevention forum. Emily showed a screenshot. The post, want to end sister-in-law's pregnancy to protect family bloodline. Are there natural methods? That was. Jessica was at a loss for words. And on October 15th, you executed your plan. Emily's voice trembled with anger. You made me trust you, disguised it as a family love, and made me drink murderous tea. Margaret broke down crying. Emily, please, we were thinking of the family. Family? Emily laughed coldly. Do families kill family? My baby died as a victim of your madness. The last page of the report included a physician's opinion. It was the result of a specialist Emily had secretly commissioned to analyze the symptoms at the time and the herb components. Obstetrician Dr. Johnson's opinion, Emily read aloud. The combination of herbs the patient ingested has an extremely high possibility of fatal effects on a 7-month fetus. Simultaneous ingestion of pennyroyal and tansy in particular has a very high risk of causing uterine contractions and placental abruption, leading to miscarriage. Ethan called Mama in a small voice. Emily picked up her son and gently stroked his head. It's okay, Ethan. Mama is here. Michael stood up. Emily, let's call the police. It's already done, Emily answered calmly. Copies of the report have already been submitted to the prosecutor's office. Arrest warrants are scheduled to be issued this evening. The color drained from Margaret and Jessica's faces. Arrest? But... Jessica said in a trembling voice. You attempted murder, and ultimately killed my child, Emily declared coldly. Legally, you'll be charged with fetal homicide. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. When Michael went to check, 2 uniformed police officers were standing there. Are Margaret Winston and Jessica Roberts here? Emily looked at her mother and sister while holding her son. You took a child away from me. But God gave me Ethan. True love is not blood ties, but heart connections. When the police officers entered the dining room, Margaret collapsed in her chair and Jessica clung to her husband, crying. 6 months later, on a spring afternoon, Emily sat on the living room sofa holding a letter. The sender was Massachusetts Women's Correctional Facility, from Margaret. Margaret and Jessica had been indicted for fetal homicide and each received 8-year prison sentences. During the trial, their premeditated crime was proven in detail and attracted public attention. Local media reported it extensively as a tragedy caused by abnormal obsession with bloodlines, and it became a catalyst for social discussion to deepen understanding of adoption. Without opening the letter, Emily watched Ethan and Michael playing in the garden. Ethan had turned 8 and was growing even brighter than before. Since the Thanksgiving incident, he sometimes said, "I have scary dreams about that day," but he was gradually recovering thanks to counseling. "Mama, look. Daddy is pushing me on the swing." Ethan's carefree laughter echoed into the house. Emily smiled and decided to tear up the letter. She no longer needed apologies or excuses from her mother. When Michael and Ethan returned to the house, the three headed to the kitchen. Tonight was a new family tradition, cooking together every weekend. "What are we making today?" Ethan asked with expectant eyes. "Your favorite spaghetti bolognese," Emily answered, and Ethan cheered. While cooking, Emily reflected on the changes over the past 6 months. After the incident, Michael's parents visited more frequently and loved Ethan like their own grandson. Emily's work colleagues continued their warm support, and it became clear who her true friends were. "Emily, about next week's school presentation," Michael said while stirring the tomato sauce. "Ethan is going to recite poetry as the class representative." "Really? That's wonderful, Ethan." "Yes. I'm going to read a poem I wrote called A Family," Ethan said proudly, puffing out his chest. Emily hugged her son. She was happier than anything that this child had written a poem about a family. Ethan clearly understood what was more important than blood ties. After dinner, as the three relaxed in the living room, Ethan asked in a small voice, "Mama, Daddy, have we become a normal family now?" Emily and Michael looked at each other. "What do you mean?" Emily asked gently. "Before, Grandma and the others said I was different, right? But now, nobody says such things." Michael sat Ethan on his lap. "You've always been our precious son from the beginning. That hasn't changed. But now I feel more secure," Ethan smiled slightly. "Because nobody tries to separate us anymore." Emily almost teared up. This child understood much more than she had thought. "That's right, Ethan. We're a real family. Family that loves each other is the most real family." That night, after putting Ethan to bed, Emily and Michael stood on the balcony looking up at the starry sky. "If that incident hadn't happened, we might still be continuing that twisted relationship," Michael said quietly. "That's right. But I'm glad the truth came out. Now Ethan can truly grow up with peace of mind." Emily squeezed her husband's hand. It had certainly been a painful experience, but it had deepened their family bonds. They had been freed from the illusion of blood ties and become a family bound by pure love. The next morning, Emily picked up the torn letter pieces from the trash and completely disposed of them. The past was the past. Now she would live looking only toward the future. "Mama, let's go to the park." Responding to Ethan's energetic voice, Emily stood up with a smile. The three of them held hands and left the house, walking into the bright spring sunshine. As a true family, to greet a new day.